Hi everyone. If you're watching this, chances are you've finished Shelmerdine's book, so congratulations. We're here in part because I'm recording this for my Greek class because I'm going to be out of town giving a paper later this week. But I wanted to give everyone online a chance to look at how we might break up a very influential piece of Greek writing, and this is Socrates' defense speech. I have omitted a there, defense speech, and this is adopted from Plato's Apology, that is the defense of the apologia of Socrates. And we might look at these numbers too. These are standard numbers. These are called Stephanus page numbers, named after the French editor who first put the kind of standard canonical works of Plato together. So we had multiple volumes, but we're going to be looking at pages 37 through 38, or at least an adaptation of that, of the volume that contained the Apology of Plato. This is one of Plato's earlier writings, and it's talking about the courtroom defense speech of his mentor and really a seminal figure, of course, in Greek thought, Socrates. All right, so enough background information. Let's, and I'll get to some more of the juicy details as we go through, but let's just start off with the Greek. So, isos un an tis epoi, and then we have the raised dot. So, isos, as you might guess from the omega sigma, adverb, so we could maybe bracket that off. Un, we're used to this particle, we're used to on as well. Look at all these short ones coming together. The thing to really focus on, of course, is this apoi, and we see that omicron iota at the end. This, for those who have just finished their principal parts quiz in my class, know that Lego has two different third principal parts, either the standard weak aorist alexa, or much more common, the strong aorist apon. So this is the optative form. So when we're thinking aorist optative, we want to be thinking, we're dealing here with a verb in which the tense, aorist, the time of it doesn't make as much difference or doesn't make so much of a contribution as the aspect. But this is a simple aspect, and it's optative with on to make a potential optative. Tis, of course, the indefinite personal pronoun someone. So let's put that all together. Perhaps then someone might say, so that's these two work together to be a potential optative. Perhaps someone might say, and this raised dot is of course equal or mostly equal to what we have in English orthography have as a colon, and then we have a capital sigma here, and it's not used with a proper name. This is the editor's way of signaling that this is indeed direct speech. We might expect that, or if you're from a European persuasion, you might expect a kind of double bracket like this, marking that we are now in direct speech. So this is quote, but this is not indirect discourse. So let's go on. Sigon de kai hesukian agon o Socrates, ukoios tese apienai kazein and ale tini kora. And then we'll stop there. And we have the semicolon there, of course, the question. So sigon, sigao, this is a verb that I'm not sure if we've had yet, but it means to keep silence, to be quiet. Here, of course, we have a omega nu ending, and if we recognize that this is indeed a contract verb where the accent would have originally fallen on the alpha, we can identify this correctly as a first person singular. Let me write that out. First singular, active, present tense infinitive. So this is not an aorist infinitive or perfect infinitive. Those have different endings. This is present tense infinitive. And again, because we're talking sorry, I keep saying infinitive. That's totally wrong. What I mean here is participle. Participle. Infinitives don't have number or those sorts of things. They do have, infinitives do have voice and tense, but they wouldn't have number and person. Anyway, sigon, being silent, and this is first person singular. We'll get to, or I guess I've been saying all of this wrong. Participles also don't have number. They do have person. All right, this is just funny now. They don't, I don't even know where to recover from all of this. Participles have number, case, and gender. So number, case, gender, or case, that's the thing I'm left out of. That's participles, that's what we're dealing with here. And they also have tense and voice. All of these things we have here for this participle. So being silent, and again, agon here, not a contract, so we don't get the circumflex over the ultima, but we have the accent here. Do, act, drive, lead, these are the common words to translate agon, but when you pair it with hesukia, that is silence, we might translate it best in English as keeping silent. So being quiet and keeping silent, O Socrates, Socrates, uk hoios. So note here with the rough breathing that our uk is going to need to have an aspirated ending, and it has an ending at all because it's followed by a vowel. So uk hoios tesi. This is, of course, second person singular future of the verb ami, which in its second principal part, the future is esomai. It is future deponent. So this is the second person singular. Of course, it used to have SSI, and that intervocalic sigma drops out, giving us this contract ending esse. Apienai, we should be able to recognize this at that point. Now, at this point, that this is a infinitive as well as zane, contract infinitive. So let's do this. That you will not be able, again, this hoios temi phrase that we're used to at this point, technically meaning will not be of such a sort that, but that is a way of Greeks commonly expressing ability. So you will not be able to go away, apienai. So this is ami with the accent, of course, to go that we're seeing here, and this is the present active infinitive. You will not be able to go away and live in another, ale, teeny. So here we can tell that with the accent on the ultima like that, and the accent on the preceding word being on the penult and acute, that this is indeed our enclitic form. So it's therefore not asking a question. It's not interrogative, but indefinite. Some other, and all of these things are modifying, ultimately, hora, land. So let's rephrase that. Keeping silent, being quiet and keeping silent, so Socrates, you will not be able to go away and live in another land. Question mark. Okay, so we get to the question, and we have to reverse our word order in English to compensate for the essay. So will you not be able to? Will you not be able to go away and live in another land just by being silent and keeping quiet? Tuta de esti, Socrates goes on to say, we can see now quietly we're out of direct speech. Tuta de esti panton chalepotaton pesai tinas humon. Let's stop there. This, so pronoun neuter, singular, this indeed is, and note here enclitic again, so we get acute accent on the day, panton, of all, so accent naturally falls on the the penult on paspasapan, so of all things the most the most difficult. So this on here making us aware that it's relating to this tuta, that it is indeed neuter, singular. And of course, when you're in the neuter, it doesn't really matter if it's nominative or accusative, but because esti is our verb and tuta is our subject, this is indeed nominative here, although that's maybe an academic distinction when dealing with the neuter. So this is indeed, of all things, the most difficult, pesai. This is the aorist infinitive of patho. And again, we're looking aorist here because we're talking simple aspect, to not keep persuading, but to persuade one time. So this is aorist infinitive of patho. Tinas, again, no accent here, and because we have an accent on the ultima here, we know that that is a result of this enclitic. So again, indefinite. This is the most difficult. This is indeed, of all things, the most difficult to persuade someones of you all. Some of you. That's a nice way to say it. Some of you. Ean men gar lego hoti to theo apethane tutesti kai dia tuto adinaton hesukian again. All right, so we're getting some repetitive phrases. That's always good as a beginning language learner. Solidifies what we know. Let's go through this now. We have an aeon. Starting a conditional phrase, and if we have an on here, we can bet that we're going to get get a subjunctive coming down the line. Men, this is of course one of our particles that we like to see, and we can expect a de coming up, and either a separation of one thing and another, or maybe on the one hand on the other. Gar explains what was going on in the previous phrase. So we're getting this gar because this might have posted a question in the minds of the hearer. Why is this the most difficult of all things? Well, let's see. For on the one hand, that's the mengar, if lego, I say, or I were to say, is this indicative or subjunctive? Morphologically, we can't tell, but this aeon is giving us a hint. This is going to be present general. If indeed I say, haughty, Lego, of course, is one of these verbs that starts indirect discourse, but we've seen a lot of ways that that can be done. With verbs like femi, you just get accusative and accusative subject and infinitive. With verbs of sensing and perceiving, you could get a participial phrase. Lego is one of these verbs that's closest to English in its word order, that we have I say, and then we have a conjunction, haughty, in this case meaning that. So I say that to the god apethane. So this is being disobedient to. We have that in the glossary. Tu testi. So again, tuta, we've seen this. And this here is referring back to the entire idea that was being posed. Keeping silent and going away. Living in another land. So this is, on the one hand, if I were to say, or sorry, let me go back. Let's read left to right how the Greeks would have done it. If on the one hand, then, I say that this is disobeying the god, and on account of this, tia tuta, that is the disobeying the god, it's impossible, adunaton. This is neuter singular and working with a gapped here, st. So if we want to be more fulsome, we would add that and add the st right there. But as we've come to learn in Greek, sometimes this verb st can be gapped. So, and especially with this adjective, adunaton, that is impossible, unable to be done. It's a fixed phrase, frankly, and Greek listeners are not going to be expecting st, even though they know it's there. So, and for this reason, namely that it's disobeying the gods, it's not being pious, it's impossible, and we might supply here again, moi. It's impossible for me, but he's might be generalizing here with the aeon here. It may be impossible for me to keep quiet. So actually, ignore that on here. That doesn't have anything to do with it. But he's saying it's impossible to keep quiet because it's impious to the gods. U paces the moi. You all will not obey me. So this is a future more vivid condition. Aeon lego, if I say, and this haughty goes really through all this, that to disobey the gods, this is, and on account of this. Well, maybe this could all be parenthetical. It's unclear where this haughty is ending. You could put it there, you could put it there. The idea is that we had the if clause. Let me get a different color for that. I should be using more colors here. If you're following along verbally, I think you might still have me. If you've just been skipping visually, this has got to be pretty messy at this point, I admit. A lesson not to scrub all the time on YouTube. Here we have the if clause going from the aeon to the end of here. And then we have, so that's all the protasis, right? The if clause. If, and then you will not obey me. That is, maybe be persuaded. If I say this things, you will not be persuaded by me. But if, on the other hand, so we have the aeon men up top, now we've got the aeon de down here. If, on the other hand, I say that, so again, we got some parallel word order here, this is useful, that this happens to be, so tinkane, we've seen this, tinkano, this is a word that often in Greek takes a supplementary participle. So we should be on the lookout for that. We're used to some verbs like taking complementary infinitives. This takes a supplementary participle. So that this happens, the greatest good to be. And then here, this is our form of ami. This is our participle, present active participle. Present participle active. And note that here, as participles have, it has a case in gender. It's accusative and masculine. This is because, it could be masculine, could be neuter. It's agreeing with agathon here. The greatest good, this happens to be. And then this is a dative of reference for man. So again, hard to translate this maybe into English. A human, a person. So, and if, on the other hand, I say that this happens to be the greatest good for a human, hekastes hemeras peri aretes dialegestai kaiton ... We'll get down to that. Alon peri hon humes emu acuete dialegomenu. All right, so we'll get back to that. Hekastes hemeras. This is one of those alpha first declension nouns that by the time we get to the genitive singular, which is what we have here, that stays along alpha. Hekastes being more of the kind of regular type that we're used to seeing in Attic, where we have the genitive singular ending in an eta sigma. These are working together, and these are forming, of course, the genitive of time within which. That's phrase to write, time within which. So that within each day, and sure, that's a nice way of saying it. It doesn't really work so well in English. This could be expressed on each day or in each day or just every day. Might be a nice way to do it in English. Every day concerning, because that's what Perry can do with the genitive, again, here an eta sigma genitive, arete, so every day about virtue, dia legesthai. So this is related to the verb lego, and then when we add a dia, we're talking across, and then it becomes deponent here, but that's not really here or there. This is conversing with. So speaking about virtue each day, and of the other things, alone, perihon. So about, and then again here we're going to have genitive, this of course being a rough breathing over this. This is not a smooth breathing participle, that's not own, being, but rather hone, genitive of those things which Himes, now that could be plural, nominative, second person pronoun. So that is what we're looking at. You all, of me, akuete. So akuete confirming that this is our subject. We have got a genitive here. We'll want to come back to why it's in that case. But you hear things that are accusative from somebody in the genitive. So emu, so you all hear / you all listen to me, is how we'd phrase that in English. And then we have, again, this verb dialegamai coming up, and then here middle passive participle dialogomanu, me conversing. So, all right, that's nice. This is a relative clause. Let's ask ourselves now, we've got our nominative subject, we've got our verb, we've got our genitive of source is ultimately what this is. It's who we're hearing things from, and that's agreeing with this participle, which is, I guess, circumstantial, which you all hear me when I'm talking about these things. This is genitive too. That's a little bit frustrating because we would like something like a tauta, these things which you hear, about which you hear me speaking. That would be nice, but note that peri over here, this preposition, is limited in the cases it can take. It needs a genitive. So because to fulfill the genitive requirements of peri, the thing that should have been an accusative within the relative clause takes the case that's needed for the preposition. Word order helps a little bit here, and of course the dialegoumenu helps set up, well, I'm speaking about these things. But this is a little bit tricky. You don't need to be absolutely happy with this, but this is one of the compromises we need to make in the language. All right, so let's go back. We've done so much here in the 17 minutes, and we're not even halfway done. But I think to get the flow before we go on, it'll be useful to start from the top. So perhaps then someone, supply maybe of you all, might say, being quiet and keeping silent, O Socrates, will you not be able to go away and live in some other land? This is indeed, day, of all things the most difficult to persuade some of you. For on the one hand, if I say generally that this is a disavowal of the gods, and on account of this, it's impossible for me to do that. That is to say, Socrates won't act in an impious way. You will not be persuaded by me. But if, on the other hand, I say that this happens to be a greatest good for a human being, namely, what? So we're setting this up. This is what they would call a cataphoric pronoun, looking forward. Normally that's a taude, but tuta I guess works here, that this is the greatest good for mankind, namely, within each day, speaking about virtue and of other things concerning which you hear me speaking. All right, and then here we go. Ha da nexetatos bios ubiotos anthropou, the most famous phrase of this entire thing. The unexamined life is a ubiotos. So we haven't hit this exactly in Shelmerdine yet, but there are going to be certain nouns that end in a similar phrase, and we can see these are cognates, right? Bios, life, and biotos, this is worthy of life. So that an unexamined life, not worthy of life is, and again we have to supply as so often, esti, for a human being, that the unexamined life is not worth living, is the sort of canonical way of phrasing that. These things, and these things, even less, heton, Pasis, that you will believe me speaking, you will be persuaded by me, you will obey me. So he says, on the one hand, you won't believe that a God commands me to say these things and that it would be impious for me to keep silent. You don't believe that on the one hand. And on the other hand, if I try to convince you all that talking about virtue and all the other things that Socrates was used to talking about every day, if he didn't believe that, if he's trying to convince them that that's the most greatest good for a human being, and that the unexamined life is not worth living. So this is all an apposition to what he's been saying before, that speaking about virtue and the unexamined life is not worth living. He says these things taken all together, even less will you be persuaded by me. So future more vivid here. He's saying, I've tried this, I know how it works. If I try to persuade you, you will not be persuaded. For if it was to me cremata, so if there was money to or for me, that is a possessive dative, and we'll want to talk about the tense here, and of course we should be sensitive whenever we get in an if clause. We need to consider, is there an on, first of all, and what tense are we seeing in the protasis, that is the if clause, and pairing this, we have to understand it both on its own, but then how it works, especially when it comes to English translation, with the apodosis, with the main clause. And look what we have here, on plus the aorist. So this is an aorist middle, and there's a gap here in our text because Shelmerdine quotes that this is propose a penalty. So this is a special meaning for the middle of timao. So we're used to this alpha contract, but timaomai means propose a penalty, something that would be a thing to pay. So I would have proposed. So if I had money, this is a past contrary to fact, imperfect here and aorist in the main clause. So if there happened to have been money for me, I would have proposed of money, however much they wanted, a melon, they were willing, they were interested in, that I pay, ektesein, so that's pay out. So here we have a correlative, however much they were willing to pay. That's how much I would have proposed. For I would not be, look at this, on plus so what is this? Well, we have blopto, right? And we've got a couple different 6 principal parts. This is what Shelmerdine calls a strong aorist passive with this bane ending. For then I would not, and here we're going on with this contrary to fact, then I would not be harmed. But now, and this is strongly in opposition to what's going on, we were talking about a hypothetical, but now, as things actually stand, for there is not to me much money, that is, Socrates is famously poor, perhaps I might be able to pay to you all, so this is a dative indirect object, I might be able to pay out to you all a mina, this is a relatively modest sum, argurio, so this is a genitive of source or material, that is English makes this of